Let me see, 32. Yeah, let's start. In your bio it still says you're an independent front-end developer, but so that's going to change really soon, right? Oh, exciting. That's really cool. You wrote an article about Git on Smashing Magazine, and today you're going to tell us how to make life easier when using Git. So kick it off.
Thank you. Well, hi everyone, and thank you for that. So I think we all have a love-hate relationship with Git. I think we really find it useful, but there's a lot that kind of goes wrong. It's become ubiquitous. Like most of us use it on every project. But whether you're brand new to using Git or have used it for years, everything's going to really go smoothly until the moment it doesn't. Like it's this odd limbo that I've kind of find increasingly interesting, where everything's in order until suddenly wondering why, a branch, which branch a change was in or something, kind of we lose things, kind of stuff goes wrong weirdly, and it's one of these things that, it happens with all programming, but Git is one of those things where when it's working fine, you're brilliant. When it's not, it's not. So the more often you commit and then merge or rebase back into the main branch, the less it happens. But I think we've all experienced it at one time or another, kind of feeling like we've completely lost control. Like you mentioned, I wrote this article. The thing I think is important to say is I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure I even know the questions. But I wrote this article kind of trying to give bite-sized techniques to give practical commands that you can use to find lost work or improve how a team works together. And today I'm kind of going to take that, but I'm going to think more about how we work and kind of what we want to do with things. And it might be a small glimpse of a very personal journey of mine, of my own mindset. And it's not even really just about Git, but I strongly believe that if one person has a question or an issue, then many others do too. So I thought it's worth sharing with you. So without trying to define every reason that we can have like an infuriating issue with Git, I've thought of a few that we've likely all experienced, like these slowdowns, these things that kind of, you just think, why is it working like this? Things should just work, So we've got kind of like unexpected conflicts. We get this all the time. Code bugs found. Well, you can't really stop that. That's not to do with Git. That's to do with your work. But it's awkward when you go to merge something and you find it doesn't work. Or pipelines failing. That can be to do with Git, or it can be to do with code. Like the first group of issues, these three are completely valid. And there's loads more. They just kind of honestly need the time and thought put into them to figure them out. Kind of better teamwork would reduce merge conflicts, and improving linting would help the code bugs. So, there's things you can improve, but not at the moment that it happens. I get really annoyed with the tiny issues, like the things that just shouldn't happen, and they can lead to code bugs. When you make a mistake, like if you're on the wrong branch and you commit something, then you can write perfectly valid code, but when you ship it, it's wrong. When you go to test it, it's wrong because you're giving them the wrong stuff. Now, hopefully we're not all getting lost every time we're in our code base, especially if you've been doing it a while. But, kind of forgetting to commit or being on the wrong branch, these things do happen. And there's a lot more that can go on the list, I think, like these tiny little things that just completely, crop up every day, different things, but constantly cropping up. So this is a corner cupboard. It's actually our corner cupboard in our kitchen. When we first moved in, there was a problem with the doors. So you could open one side, but you couldn't open both at once. Technically, it's a working cupboard. You can open the door, put stuff in, close the door. It works. But you kind of want to see everything inside or move things around. Kind of, I want to open both doors and see what I'm doing, And it just got stuck. You'd pull it open and it gets stuck in the middle like that. And it was infuriating. It was this tiny issue. All I had to do was replace the hinges. It was really cheap and quick. And, I'm not good at DIY, but it was easy to do. And every time I open the cupboard now, I'm just glad it works properly. I think, I'm so glad I fixed that. Even though it's this tiny, cheap thing, I didn't have to replace the cupboards. It was so easy to do. But I'm just, every time I open it, I'm like, I'm glad that works. Like it would annoy me if it wasn't working. If I hadn't fixed it, things would have been okay. but it would be a small annoyance every time. And sometimes I think about the people that lived here before me, because they probably had this kitchen for 5 years and didn't fix the cupboard. And now it's not perfect. You can see it's missing the top and bottom borders, you know, kind of, it's not, you know, I still need to fix things, but it's not the annoying everyday annoyances that kind of crop up and you're like, why can't I just fix it? And then you don't end up fixing it and leaving it for 5 years. You know, I don't want to do that. And I didn't with this door, and I'm glad I didn't, you know. So it's the tiny issues that constantly slow us down, or at least they constantly slow me down. Maybe it's just me, but I'm forever checking out a branch with a similar name to the one I'm meant to type. You get tools like tab completion where you can kind of type, you know, git checkout and then press tab and it'll find a branch. But it kind of gives you a list of all of the branches you've got, which is really useful. And it means you're not going to type one that you don't have. But you've still got a long list, especially if you're like me and have hundreds of branches left on your Git repo on your local computer. So I think, you know, I like how it removes the requirement of spell. And I think that's something that if you haven't got, then that's like one of these small fixes that you can kind of fix. But there's still thought involved. You know, you still need to know what branch you was on. If you have two, like, you know, they're very similarly spelled, one's got a plural, you know, like things and thing, it's very easy to forget which one you're on. And if you go to it and the wrong one, then you get one of the mistakes at the beginning, which was, you know, I'm on the wrong branch, I've committed it, people have got the wrong code. So these are tiny things. You know, it's not this complicated kind of, you know, on that article I wrote, it's not, there was lots of kind of complicated techniques to, if you're in a bad situation, that's how you solve. I'm talking here about the simple techniques, you know, or not even techniques, the simple problems that we kind of shouldn't need to be getting into. And I'm not saying that thinking is bad, you know, it's fine to choose between branches, but I've been specifically training my brain to think about what's important and to have intention where possible. And I think that's the key. I think intention, instead of just roaming around Git or around your code or around Photoshop, you know, this applies to anything. But kind of knowing what you're trying to do as opposed to just trying to figure it out and spending time doing that. So in a previous talk, I referred to how a slow website will mean some people can't use it, and therefore performance and accessibility are tightly linked. And most people who care about performance or even about accessibility kind of are very clear on this. But in the talk, I took it further. The easier something is to do, the more accessible it is, likely the quicker it will be to achieve the goal. So performance of a website is not just load times, but also cognitive load required to use it. And the same goes for us, you know, when we're working, when we do anything really in life, but, you know, I'm talking about Git here because, you know, I've been doing some Git stuff recently, but it really does apply to everything. And if we've already got a lot of things on our mind, such as, you know, we've written the code, we've got to remember what bugs are still in there, we've got to remember what we're going to write for our commit message, you know, we really want to reduce the amount of unnecessary thinking, working out what branch you want it to do. You know, that stuff is just happen in the background.
Jane, this seems like, like a little glitch in your slide. Oh, now it's better.
Yeah, was that a...
Now it's...
You should have seen this, is that right?
Yeah. Now it's no.
Oh dear.
I wonder if other people see it too. Like, there's 2 people here that see it. And a while ago it was gone. Animations are lagging, yeah.
Oh, okay. Has that been going the whole time or just now?
I think so.
I'll just redo the full screen quickly.
Design. Maybe it helps when you resize it. I don't know.
Yeah, just resize that.
But
it seems that it looks like you've got. Can you see a black line down the middle? That shouldn't be there.
Now it's good.
Now it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll carry on, but
okay.
Yeah. So when I is it just that I go too fast, or is it kind of not working at all? Do I leave it? I'll keep. I can see it. I can see it on the screen, so I'll keep an eye on
that. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, this is perfect. Okay.
So yes, the technology should work hard for us and not the other way around, right? You know, we should be, you know, we should be doing what we want instead of just fixing stuff that the computer's not working, you know. And I don't know about you, but I find this happens all the time. So as much as I'd like to say that I oops, wrong button. As much as I like to say that I know how to prevent all code bugs, and I'd love, my goal is to do a PhD in like stopping bugs on computers, but that's not going to happen. And I can't make sure your pipeline never fails. But so, I've got to manage expectations here. I'm talking about small things, little things. There's always going to be some problems that require our full attention. Some things can be prevented, but usually at the time they happen, it's too late to prevent them. So you just have to handle them. Is this small type of issue that I'm talking about today, the ones that are preventable? So take the example of changing branch before committing. You could, for example, customize your terminal to change color depending on Git status. That I'm not going to go into that here, but there's a whole load of ways to kind of make it different colors or icons. So, kind of like if you're looking at a commit or whether you're, within a rebase or all of these kind of things that, are quite complicated. But when there's a color code or, it says it, then it's a lot easier to understand what you're doing. So I remember I once set aside a day to customize my terminal. And at the time I thought I was being a bit silly. I thought I was a bit over the top, spending a whole day to customize it. I thought that was a bit nerdy, kind of just for my own fun instead of actually good work, But it saved me so much time. And I consistently have these things where I think to myself, like, oh, if I hadn't had that color, then I would do this wrong. And then there'd be a mistake later. So these little things are important. And it's the type of problems where, like the kitchen cupboard, I get annoyed because I could have prevented it. If something's hard, I don't mind spending time on it, but I don't want to spend time on these things that shouldn't exist, So the most annoying thing is I usually won't do anything about it. I'll usually be like, oh, that's annoying, and then go off and do my work instead of actually taking the time to fix it. So I could go months knowing it could be fixed, getting annoyed every single time, and yet ignoring it because it's a minor issue. But these minor issues do build up. And while there's far more complicated issues to solve, every time you hit one of the small ones, it will cause extra cognitive load and context switching. And I really hate context switching because my brain can't do it. I can remember loads of stuff at once, but about one thing. If I've got to remember lots of things about different things, I can't do it. And that's kind of what Git is for. So we shouldn't have to be doing it. We should be making the technology work for us. So instead of pushing a branch up to your QA tester that's waiting to try out your brilliant new feature, you'll be spending time, probably a lot of it, figuring out why it's not working as you expected. And maybe it's just me that hits these snacks, and maybe there's no point me talking about it because everyone else has it sorted out. But I doubt that's true. I reckon we all have this problem of just like everything just doesn't quite work how it should. So on the article I mentioned, I wrote about Git reflog, rebase, bisect, all kinds of really complicated things that, like I said, could be really useful in some situations. If you have this hard problem that you need to solve, some of those will fix it. You can go through a reflog of every single command that you've run on Git. You can remember exactly what you've done, but that's quite complicated, and you shouldn't be needing to do that every day. So out of all of the tips I shared in the article, my favorite is this dash. So in Git, a single dash means the previous branch, or more specifically, the previous head that you were at on your tree. But that's complicated. If you think of previous branch or previous place you were. And two dashes indicate a specific file, which is really useful. But it's a single dash that I use every single day. Now, I'm aware that it's a bit odd for a single dash to be the only command that I'm going to talk about in this talk, because I wrote that article with loads of complicated, interesting, fun commands. And like literally, this is it. This is the command I'm showing you today. And you might know about it already, you might not. To be honest, I've been using Git for a very long time, and I only probably learned about it this year. So, you might not know about it. But today I want to think how we use our tools, how we make the tools work for us, how we write code, and which of the small issues we face. Like I said, this could be in Photoshop. This could be, any part of the computer that you use, even Word. If something doesn't happen the way you want it and you want to fix it, then fix it is basically what I'm saying. But you're probably not going to find the dash as useful as I do, because you probably have a different workflow to me. But for me, this is what I find has really helped me. So basically find what works for you, right? So there's going to be a command or customization or something that you'll be thankful of every day. For me, it's this dash at the moment. There'll be something else at some point. So now we have some commands, and that's not working. Okay, got a bug there. Okay, so with these commands, you can see what I'm doing is I'm using the dash, but I'm using the dash as almost a variable. So what I'm doing is I'm saying git checkout dash, git rebase dash, git merge bash, git log dash, whatever it is you want to do. I'm saying for the previous branch I was on, or for the previous place I was at. So git checkout dash will go to the previous place I was at. Git rebash dash is going to take the current branch that I'm on and replay all of the commits that I've got to the one that I was previously on. And merge will do a similar thing. So why is this interesting? Well, for me, it's all about, I said about intention. It's all about basically, I don't need to think. I could alias git checkout to GC or to checkout or to go to or whatever, and then I won't have to think about those words. But those are kind of, they don't change. Git checkout is a thing that, if you want to shorten it, you can, but everyone knows that when you want to check out a branch, you use git checkout, and that works. Whereas the next bit, where I've got the dash, where the variable goes, changes every time. So it would be your branch name, and then you've got to remember what the branch name is, and all of this stuff. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm kind of, by using a dash, I'm kind of aliasing the variable. I'm using a variable that says I want the previous branch, and I think that's really useful. Because I don't have to think about what the previous branch is. And I'm sure there's other alternatives that are like this, but and there are ways to go back more than one branch, but most of the time I just want the previous thing I was doing. I switch between the two, go to something else, switch between the two, that's what I do. So for me, the dash is useful to my workflow. But the reason it works so well is intention. So although it's unintuitive in the sense that you're not going to remember, if you've never seen this dash before, you're going to be like, well, it's a dash. Like, what's it do? You're not going to guess that dash means previous. But when you know it, it becomes, a lot easier. Okay. Now, we know this stuff already. Most of us are already trying to build websites that work for everybody, reduce the amount of thinking required to complete a task. We know that every time you have to stop to think, you're more likely to procrastinate and get sidetracked. So I think we need to start designing for ourselves. I'm not saying put development first and make users suffer for it. This isn't like a UX versus DX kind of thing. It's just literally, if you know you're having a struggle with something, if you know that every day you get an error every day and it's annoying and you've got to change it, and every day the same thing happens, set aside some time and figure out how to fix it, because there might be something that, once you've done it, it'll fix it forever. So in the same way as taking a walk is good for our mental health, kind of spending a little time to customize or learn about our workflows is better for our productivity and reduces the little annoyances. You might find the dash is confusing and not explicit enough, because if you don't know what it is, then, you might want to say, well, I know my branch was blah. I want to go to blah, because if I do dash, I might go to a different one because I might have forgotten I was somewhere else. And that's really valid. I'm certainly not saying everyone should use git dash, but what I'm saying is basically find the dash, find the thing that works for you and fix it, fix the mundane, fix the small things that we normally leave alone and kind of don't spend enough time thinking about. So we've all got pain points that are so tiny that we ignore them. And quite often we go through that process hundreds of times. So I've always found it hard to prioritize the small fixes. And even in a website, like getting small fixes through is a lot harder than big fixes for a lot of people. But it is worth it. So your mundane might involve learning a small git command like the dash that I've been going on about, or adjusting the browser to refresh every time you update your code, or maybe it's a shortcut for all the time you use in Photoshop or Sketch. But we all have them. There's always something that's not quite working as it should. And we kind of need to take the time to make it work, and you'll thank yourself for it. So yeah, just figure out what isn't working for you and try to fix it. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Shane.
It's a bit quicker than I expected, but that's all right.
That's not a problem at all. Let's see. Do we have any questions? We have claps here.
I think the main slide, I lost my notes on, so it's probably a bit...
Oh, no. Still want to look for it?
No, it's fine. I basically said what I meant.
Sweet. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Feel free just to put them in the chat.
See what I mean? It's kind of like it's not that I want to teach anything. It's just I really do think it's worth spending time to just fix stuff that you know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and also like sometimes you just there's some kind of problem you have, and then you never put any time in it. And once you kind of do, you only have to put in whatever, like 10 minutes or so.
Exactly.
And then, man, like, yeah, like there's, and then you thought I should have done that earlier.
Yeah. Because I mean, on that article I wrote, out of all of the tips, that is the one I use the most, and I just find that insane because like you'd have thought, oh, you'd use complicated things all the time, but it's not true. And I think the more advanced you get, the more you use the simple stuff more. So
yeah. I guess it's also like and also like for blog posts and stuff. Like some stuff is really difficult, and sometimes you're just looking for like a super simple blog post that just explains it really well.
That's true. It's like recipes. You get the recipe right at the bottom after a long story. It's like, no, I just want the recipe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's see. Do you have any questions? I've just been listening very quietly. Otherwise, I guess at some point we're just gonna. We still have a bit of time left. Let's see. There's a lot of stuff happening on my computer. Is there anything else like you would love to share with us, or like a few things like this is the stuff. Some quick, for example, whatever tips and tricks that will benefit everybody who's listening a lot.
Okay, I think so. So I mentioned about having 2 dashes, and like literally I've gone from 1 dash to 2 dash. I'm doing well there. So so when you use 2 dashes, you're saying about a specific file, which is really cool because if you want to do something like find out who deleted a file, you can't just go through. You can't use git blame, which checks for a line because the file's not there anymore, and it's awkward to do git log because you see all of the all of your commits, so going through it is awkward. And most people would normally kind of go into kind of GitLab or GitHub and kind of search for it that way. But what you can do is if you do git log -- and then the name of the file, then you can see the history of that file, even if it no longer exists, which is quite useful because then you can see like, that person deleted it.
Yeah.
So using it not for collaboration but for your own version. So I mean, I wouldn't say there's much difference there. Kind of the way you use it with a team is harder because everyone's kind of got to do it the same way, which means maybe you put things in place about kind of making the file endings all the same if you're using Windows versus Linux, that kind of thing. But if it's for yourself, you still want branches because you still want to not lose the work you've done in terms of like you don't want to you want to do things in sections kind of as you would normally with branches. I suppose you said you were new, so you might not know about tags. Tags are quite useful. So if you do, I think it's git tag -m or -v or something, I'm sure you can Google it, but you can make a tag or you can do it in GitHub and GitLab or whatever you use. If you use git tag, then you can set basically a version, which in GitHub is called a release. And then you can number it or whatever. And then what that does is it's the same as kind of steeping up a file and saying it's 0.1. Your tag says this commit is what I'm calling this, and then you can do another tag for the next one. And then it's basically a way of having named commits, but it's really useful, especially if you're working for yourself or doing your own thing. Like I did an app and I was consistently increasing it. And it was just handy to be able to like be like, oh, it broke there, you know, that's handy.
Go ahead.
So that's a bit different, isn't it? So when I hit the publish button in the CMS, I want to see the result. So yeah, I guess if we're given a kind of a Git spin on that, I suppose we're in this really happy, lucky place where a lot of stuff's free now. So like GitHub Actions is free for most people, and Netlify is quite cheap, and I think free for most, you know, most things that, you know, unless you're a company making money, you'll probably be getting by with it. So if you want to run a Jamstack project and people are saying, well, I want it to update immediately, you can literally just have a GitHub action that when a hook gets called, which could be on a button, you know, it could be when you update your CMS, or it could be when you push your 11T files or whatever it is, an action can take place where it immediately rolls out. And okay, it's not as quick as WordPress, which is seconds, because like the person on main stage was saying earlier, it kind of, WordPress is always computing. Like, although this isn't computing, you're still able to trigger something. So it might take 5 minutes, it might take an hour, it might take a few seconds, I don't know, but you can get the same kind of experience if that's what you want, using, you know, hooks, and GitHub Actions probably a good place to start. Yeah.
Because also with like what like Stefan says, like how do we sell Jamstack to e-marketing folks? But then don't you just on one side want to have a CMS, and then on the other side, for example, for like the developers want to have the flat files?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what he's saying is that you kind of, they want things to just happen straight away, don't they? But really, if you're saying that this is going to be faster, it's going to be cheaper, you know, you can back it up on your USB stick, you know, you don't have to have a server running, then I think most people kind of see the benefit of that. You know, it's quite, I think as long as they're still getting what they want, which is to be able to update the content, I think there's a lot more positives to it. Yeah. And also, one thing I've found, when you change CMS, kind of, it can really break. You've got to like do database migrations and stuff. If you just have it so that it kind of, you know, boils down to HTML files, then even if that's not what you want to use generally, it's just kind of like what happens in the end. Then if what you use normally breaks, you still have the HTML files. So like you don't lose your website, which I've done in the past. I've lost the website just because the database has gone wrong. Whereas that can't happen because you've just got static HTML files, which is not a bad backup option.
No. Yeah. Yeah, you can always make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Do we have any more questions? Or maybe people have been struggling with something they can throw in the chat, and maybe you can...
I'll be an agony aunt.
Give us some advice on it. Also, like, for example, if you have like your personal project, do you also make branches, for example? Like if you're working on stuff yourself, like how do you set it up?
Yeah, I definitely do.
You're really...
Sometimes I kind of sometimes cheat, and I think, oh, I'm not going to use Git, or I'm going to just have the main branch. I'm not going to do branches, but I always regret it when I do that. Kind of things go wrong. Like I said at the beginning, kind of the more you commit and then put into your main branch, the less it can go wrong. Like the smaller the changes, and that's especially true when working in big teams. The smaller your changes, the way easier it is to do. It's less to test, it's less to go wrong, it's less to merge conflict if someone else does a large change. Like 2 big things are going to be way more complicated than 100 tiny things. And that's true even if you're just working for yourself, even if you're just making a side project. If you decide, oh, well, what's it going to be like if I add authentication to this? Then you end up adding a kind of like authentication code into all parts of your site, and you're like, oh, this is going wrong, or it's broken, or how do I get back? You're on a branch, you just come out of it, or you make a new branch to do similar things. Or quite often what I do is I come out of it, make another branch, and kind of like use the first one as a prototype. And then I've still got the code there. Like that's the best thing about Git. Like you've still got your code, so you're not going to lose it, and you can kind of refer back to it. And a lot of people kind of used to comment everything, and kind of with Git, kind of you don't need to comment things because the code's still there. It's just in Git, so you can kind of not need to comment it out and just look in the log.
Yeah, like Git has saved me so many times when I broke something again, and you don't exactly what you've changed where, and then you just jump back one. And you're like, oh, everything still works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think going back to what we were saying about kind of tagging, like you say, the more you can kind of have, this is stable, this is safe to use, then you can roll back to that. If you've just got loads of untagged commits, and you're like, well, one of these is version 1.2, but I don't know which one it is, then you know, and a lot of people do that. I've done it in the past. Kind of, it's very easy to not tag things. But then you've kind of got to look through the commit messages, being like, oh, that was when I merged that branch in. That must have been about the time that I did this change. It's not worth the hassle. That's one of these things of like, it's such a small thing to do. You'll thank yourself later,
Yeah, wonderful. I think we're going back to the main stage. Shane, thank you very much for your talk. For everybody who's still here, or maybe you missed like the first bit, we will be publishing your video. That will take a little while, but we'll first send it to you and then we'll release it to the rest of you.
Okay.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers.